present together. I would like to introduce you to Moises, Seraphin, and Brett Cornick. Mr. Seraphin has been a field engineer at Staubli Electrical Connectors since 2017. Did I say that right?
You did. Staubli.
Okay. Thank you.
Say Stoibli, but you're right.
Stoibli. Thank you. Covering Southern California, he currently serves as the AIAA Los Angeles Section Young Professionals Chair. Mr. Seraphin is an active member of SAE and was honored to present at the 2019 AEISS on high-density electrical contracts for more electric aircraft. In recent years, Mr. Seraphin completed the Jack Franchetti Executive Presentation Course and Dale Carnegie Leadership Development. Now, before I introduce and finish my introduction of Mr. Seraphin, I'll also introduce Brett as well. And I'm gonna go ahead and read both of your bios, and then I'll let you guys share the time, 10 minutes each, with hopefully if there's any questions at the end. Let me finish with Mr. Seraphin, who earned his BS in Aerospace Engineering from Virginia Polytech Institute and State University in Virginia. He has also worked on projects for the Office of Naval Research, U.S. Navy, and was honored as a Distinguished Aerospace Engineering Alumni at Virginia Tech for his 2012 TED Talk. Now, Brett Cornick is an MS in Materials Science from UCLA, class of 2018. He's an AIAA Los Angeles Council member. He's excited about aerospace, and recently he moderated an happy hour with this chapter on April 2nd. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Can't wait for your presentation.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, can you guys hear me? All right, seems like there may be some feedback. All right, give me a second here. All right, how about now? Is this better, everyone? All right, perfect. So I'm gonna be doing a quick presentation. I only have 10 minutes, so I'm gonna try to be brief. I know there are a number of high-level discussions and technical presentations. I want this to be very low level. It's gonna be more sci-fi because it's oriented toward the future and future generations. And it's gonna be focused primarily on historical realities. So sorry if it comes off as a bit dark, but it is the reality facing many of our next generations and our current generation. And then after that, Brett will be doing his presentation as well, all right? So I'm gonna put a quick timer to make sure I stay on time. So next slide. So again, what are we doing now? There are numerous agencies right now and companies that are working and on defining existing challenges. So there's tons of problems that we have to face to be able to make it to the next level, to be able to make it for future exploration. But we're doing a pretty decent job at least preparing those future generations to have everything they need. Next slide. So again, we understand some of the challenges medically, as a number of others have talked about earlier in earlier presentations. For example, osteoporosis or bone density loss, muscle atrophy, and you can see at the bottom left, Frank DeWeen, I believe he's doing the Colbert treadmill just to be able to maintain muscle mass and also to reduce some of the density loss. And we also know the other presentation before spoke about VIIP, the visual impairment due to intracranial pressure. So the way to combat that would be artificial gravity, but you know, you kind of got to go 2001 Space Odyssey before we can get there. Next slide. So we understand that there's a number of new technologies and roles that are currently being created and being utilized right now in industry. For example, again, I'm an aerospace engineer who's pivoted to work on the electrical side of things. No one cares about subcomponents until they fail. And so again, just as Marty talked about in his previous presentation, electricity is key. It's huge. You know, imagine right now with all of what we have going on here around society, if we didn't have electricity, it would be complete martial law outside. And it's the same thing when it comes to interplanetary space and it comes to travel. So, bottom right shows one of the contact technologies that we can disclose that we make for my manufacturing company, where it's called multilamus in German, which is louvered, high density louvered contacts. And a lot of the work that we do and I do right now through SAE, IEEE, IEC, and working with the various NERDLs and working with UL and TUV is identifying these across all industries, including aerospace, and how do we get to that next level? And so I've had a lot of high level presentations for folks who don't think it's a big deal, to realize how big it is, because when things go bad, they go bad catastrophically. A number of other different systems, again, hydraulic systems, data and communication, without those, you're not going anywhere propulsion systems, you're not going anywhere fast. Composite materials, you're going to be pretty heavy when you get there. Modular enclosures, being able to have someone in the HABs to live in. And then also AI and drones to be able to help you, similar to your TARS and some of the other more sci-fi oriented R2D2s to help in your endeavors. In the top right, you can see the Dragon Crew. I know that's getting ready to come here in May 27th. So that's a new technology. It's something that's going to be really helping us to push the horizons and being able to do the next gen space travel. And the bottom left, I call them the Trekkies, but as you know, Virgin Galactic, they develop new spacesuits. So those are the things that we're working on right now to get us to that next level. But there's so much more to come. All right, next slide. So future generations, I went to an amazing presentation hosted by Ken, great job, Ken, by Dr. Jim Logan. He was the NASA Chief of Flight Medicine and Chief of Medical Operations at NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston. And his presentation really, for me as a technical guy, broke down the realities that we'd be dealing with. It's not so much of, okay, yeah, we know how to get there. It's how do we get there and everyone survives. So next slide. So Ferdinand Magellan, everyone knows him for being able to circumnavigate the globe, but most people forget he technically didn't make it. So as you know, his voyage left September 20th of 1519, and he had a crew of around 270 men. There was a mutiny. He lost a ship in a storm. There was a deserted crew that left to go back to Spain and to Portugal. They suffered from starvation and scurvy. They had a battle in Guam with the local natives. And then he got killed in the Philippines by the Macatan warriors. And that was in 1521 before the crew finally made it back in September of 1522, sorry. And when they arrived back in 1522, they only had 18 or 19 survivors. So that's very reminiscent to me of some of the first voyages that we'll have to try to do something that hasn't been done. It's going to be very sci-fi, but it's going to be very scary, to say the least. Next slide. So again, another piece of that too. Well, I think my slide messed up, but first voyages don't typically go well, as we know with every part of history. And so even for sci-fi, and I use sci-fi as an example, that way I don't disclose projects that are existing or that we're working on, and I can keep it, I can disclose as much as possible for the public sphere, but first voyages don't go well. So you remember in Interstellar, Cooper's journey. His journey was the second voyage to see what happened from the first voyage, as many remember. And so with that first voyage, things went pretty bad. You look at Miller's planet, you had gravitational time dilation. Miller didn't make it. You go to Dr. Mann's planet. Dr. Mann, he lied. He just didn't want to be alone. So that was pretty bad. And then you also go to the bottom right where you had Edmund's planet where Edmund died. Dr. Brand made it there. It seemed habitable. But unless Cooper made it back, she probably died alone. Next slide. And then we also go to the historical reference of Pilgrims. Look at the Mayflower Pilgrims. Again, there are those who say that there were other expeditions before the 1600s and the 1500s and various expeditions. Not a lot of recording of those, but that didn't go well for the Mayflower Pilgrims. In the first winter, half of them died of scurvy, pneumonia, tuberculosis. We talk about coronavirus right now. Let's just say that tuberculosis, dysentery, and pneumonia have a lot more numbers. But it's a sad reality of being able to travel like that. And so You think about the historical populations of the colony and the expansion of that. Really, much of that began to expand after you had a lot of people, unfortunately, perish for one reason or another, but most of it due to illness. Next slide. So you say to yourself, okay, so how do you make it survive? I mean, the first problem is going to be food. Whether it's by terraforming and nuclear reacting, or dropping a nuke on the poles, or being able to farm in space. Currently through NASA, there isn't a solution that's available with the current technologies for terraforming. But we can reference sci-fi. Again, you look at Red Planet, atmospheric producing algae. Great concept, didn't end well in the movie for them. You look at The Martian, the botanist approach, where essentially you can do the Mark Watney thing and figure it all out. It's got a science feed out of it, you know. But that didn't work out great for him after the explosion. Interstellar, Cooper Station, that actually ended up being a more viable solution, and that's more reminiscent of what we see coming here in the horizon of the Von Braun station. Again, still yet to be realized, but I think that's probably a more optimal solution of being able to mass produce food for us to have on multiple planets. Next slide, because I know I'm running short. So again, part of that is once we get to the point where we can terraform or create our own food for us to survive, it's going to be continued expansion. And so we think about expansions historically, again, from 1835 to 1855 in the US. People think that, oh, a lot of the pioneers were killed off by Native Americans and other different things. Actually, most of them died from cholera, smallpox, and a number of other different diseases, similar to, again, the COVID things that are happening in now in current times. Same thing with the Oregon Trail. Over 65,000 plus people died, but primarily due to diseases. And like I said, dysentery is, if you played the game, it's due to get you. So I'd like to say that things will probably be more so in the expansion factors of war-based expansion, similar to Starship Troopers or to Dune. But if you remember from reading the books, I read a lot of the Frank Herbert books back in the day. Paul Atreides, he became the top of his family because of political strife and, you know, his family getting killed. Next slide. So the roles in interplanetary space and the jobs, they're really going to have to shift because the big thing about the primary roles of space are how do we make everyone survive? Because nothing matters if everyone dies. So space science and space medicine is truly key in one, being able to get there, and then also being able to survive the elements that are being put on the human condition in the body. The second part is really going to be the engineering and architecture of the structures. From there, unfortunately, we know, as all things, that conflict will arise. So there has to be a military or defense strategy to help get us there. And ultimately, when we think about what's going to happen right now over the next 100 years or more, the space race was more or less pushed by military and defense expansion. And so that's probably going to be more key as well, not to mention the fact that conflict is inevitable. Part of that also is going to be food. How do we eat? It's going to be in agriculture. So there's going to be some botanists out there who are really going to get a first-class ticket to Mars or another planet. Secondary roles are going to be manufacturing, because of course someone does have to make all the goods. Historians, writers to document it, because no one knows too much about what happened to the explorers of the 14 and 1500s, because no one was there to write it down and be able to share that shared history. There has to be religious leaders and psychologists, because people are going to lose their minds. It's not going to be as tongue-in-cheek as most people think. It's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. There will be troubles, there will be struggles, and the point is to mitigate it through government, law and order, and other means. So with that, I know I'm over time by about 30 seconds to a minute, so I'm going to hand it off to Brett Cornick. Sorry, Brett.
No problem. Thanks.